And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it and you came back for more. Folks, very good decision because we have a lot more for you. I have an incredibly interesting guy with me today. All right. He's going to talk about some stuff that we don't normally get to talk about on this show. I'm really excited because I don't always get to learn something, straight out. But I mean, I have the notebook ready to take notes. So if we hit a point where I'm not asking questions and I'm just over here writing furiously, just bear with me because I'm trying to learn too, just like you guys are. But I can't wait to listen to this guy some more. This is the podcast, folks, that is about podcasters. It's for podcasters. It's done by podcasters. This is the place that we come together to lift each other up. And finally, this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So let's get sailing and introduce our guest today. Please welcome, let's see, from Romania by way of Glasgow, the founder of Saspod, which I'm going to let him tell you about, and the host of the Pod Files. Please welcome Bogdan Bratis. Bogdan, how you doing?
Hello, everyone. Nice to talk to you, man. I'm happy to join the podcast and give a little bit of piece of advice for podcasters, and hopefully record an educational podcast with you, man.
I love it. I appreciate you being here, man. You you cover a lot of ground, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about it. Before we get to that point, do me a favor and just kind of tell everybody who is Bogdan Bratis. What are you about, brother?
Right. So I'm very um uh, multifaceted individual. So I do loads of things. So first thing first, I'm from Romania, from Transylvania, from a little town called Satu Mare, which is right in the northwest of Romania, very close to the Hungary border and Ukraine border as well. And I moved in the UK in 2016, and I'm a musician. I started as a musician. I've been doing music all my life. And then what I did was followed a university, a popular music production course at Southampton Solent University, and I learned all about audio in there through music, basically. And then obviously you would get a chance to experience a little bit of the marketing side of the music industry as well. So I was DIY, releasing my own music on Spotify, Apple Music, and all that. And I had a little bit of success through music. Back in Romania, I was in the final of X Factor, and I had a little bit of success there as well. And at some point, I decided to give this business thing a little bit of a chance for me, because I always thought like I'm able to market my music. However, my music is not listened by many people because music is very subjective. It's something that it's a product that maybe people don't want necessarily, let's say, right? And the competition is fierce, right? And I was thinking if I would develop a service that I would be really good at, and I would try to sell this to companies or individuals that want to work with me, and basically do something really valuable for other content creators and all that, I'll be able to get it quite well, and I will be able to have a little bit of success. So what I did at some point, I decided to go on Upwork, which is it's a freelance website. It's a talent marketplace, and I started my journey there. And I worked for very little money in the beginning to get reviews that I needed, and worked on quite a few shows. Some of them were less known shows. Some of them were a little bit more emerging, up and coming. And slowly I started building a profile on that platform on Upwork. So now if you go on Upwork and you type podcast producer or podcast editor or anything like that, you're gonna find me there. I'm maybe one of the top producers on that platform. Now from that point, at some point, I filled in the amount of hours I could take a day with my clients. So I decided to start a real business. So what I did, I founded a business called Sew and Sign. So this was kind of like the precursor of Saspod. was a website where I offered all sorts of audio services. So it was based on audio only. So it would be anything about podcasts, audiobooks, music for companies, like, for example, production music, jingles and intros and sonic logos, so audio branding, and sound design, so all sorts of different things. So I was not niched. However, I got a little bit of attraction, and it was still a very small thing, and I was running it by myself. But slowly, I started hiring other people to help me out with podcast editing, with all sorts of other things. Like, I started offering show notes and copywriting services, and then video production. So it started evolving based on what my customers requires from me. So I literally did something that my customers wanted through research and all that. So and then at some point, there was a time when I said, you know what, I want to get these like really, really big, as big as possible. So I'm going to transition So and Sign into a company that will do more than podcast production. It will do the entire thing. Will be a one-stop shop for podcasters. So I came up with Saspod, which actually comes from So and Sign, SASPOD. That's how the name came about. And it was short. I found the domain, I bought the domain, I built the website. And now Saspod is a podcast production company. It has a podcast hosting site to it as well. So we have a software in place that allows you to publish your podcast on all the different platforms, similar to what Buzzsprout or Podbean or all these places do. And then also we are launching a podcast marketing service as well. So market a certain service, like a certain product, through podcasting, and build your personal brand, build your business brand, and all that through podcasting. So we're trying to hit as many issues as possible in the podcasting niche, and try to work with companies a lot, as well as with individuals like influencers that want to build a huge follow base. Yeah, we're doing that. So that's kind of like my story from the beginning to this point. I also have a studio here in Glasgow. Some of my local clients come and use this studio for podcast recording. And yeah, I'm all about that. So this is who I am.
My goodness. Okay. I mean, talk about being a self-made man. I absolutely love the story. I also have to applaud you. I started out on Upwork, and
Really?
doing, and then moved into Fiverr, and all this other stuff back in the day. And so that was, I think, Upwork was Odesk before that, and
Yeah,
GOOOOO and all this other stuff. So I feel the pain because I mean, all you're really doing there is grinding away, trying to get your name out, trying to get sort of some notoriety so that you can charge a little more, and you're really working for peanuts at that point. So
exactly.
yeah, you paid some dues, brother.
So when I joined Upwork, it was quite interesting because at that point I had no income whatsoever. I just finished university. I used to have I never worked a normal job in my life, so I never was employed in any corporation or anything like that. And this is not for me. The money that I made was from music before I was doing podcasting. And then at some point, I finished university. I had there a campus job. I was supervising the students in the studios. And obviously, once I finished university, I could not work on that job anymore. And that job wasn't paying me a lot, actually. It was like £400 a month. Like, it's nothing. So that it will not even cover your needs, like your basic needs and all that. But together with some gigs that I would get around the city, with some bands like function bands and all that, I would be able to make enough money to have a normal life, right? But at some point, I had to go and rent a different property in the city center of Southampton, where I used to live, and I had to find a way to make an income. And what I did, I hired one guy from India to do a certain job on my website, which deals with sitemaps for SEO purposes, to make sure that your website ranks well on Google. I wanted to hire somebody to do it for me because I didn't know exactly how to do it. And then this guy started asking me some personal questions about my life and all that. And I said, this guy doesn't know me very well. He probably doesn't care a lot, but you know what? I'm just gonna tell him all my stories and all my pains, just to kind of like get some of that pain away. And telling him like, look, I don't have a job and I'm doing this and I'm trying to get my music out there. Nobody buys it. I'm not sure what the heck am I doing. And then the guy told me like, look and sell your services on Upwork, because I'm working on Upwork a lot. I hired this guy on Fiverr, and he literally, from this guy, I went on Upwork and I said, one day I'm just going to complete that profile and I'm going to send 100 proposals. And I'm not kidding. I sent 100 proposals in 2 days. And Upwork is not that crazy anymore, but it used to have so many jobs you could apply for. And I applied to audiobook, sound design, podcasting, all sorts of things. And the first job that I landed as a podcast producer, it happened quite fast. And the guy was from another podcast agency, I believe, and he wanted some podcast editors to work for him. And literally in the proposal, I said, I never worked with podcasts before. I have no idea how to edit a podcast. I'm an amazing music producer. I work with hundreds of tracks per session, and I actually work for film and all that, for sound design and all sorts of things. But I never edited a podcast. But I would love if you would give me a chance. And by the way, he had one of the requirements, you must, and he said you must work on Logic Pro. And I didn't work on Logic Pro. I worked on Cubase, which is another software. And I literally said I have no chance on landing this job. But I literally gonna tell him like, look, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not doing it the way you say. I'm gonna do it the way I say. And I also don't have a lot of experience, but I really love if you could give me a chance. The price is good, so you better take it. And the guy said, you know what, I'm gonna give you a chance. So he gave me a chance, and I worked for this guy for a year or so. So yeah, it was really good.
That's, I mean, you just said, I have no idea how to do the job I'm applying for,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
hire me. And he went, you
Yeah.
know what? I love your attitude. Come on board.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want to do. You want to be a little bit different than other people when you apply to these kind of jobs. When you try to pitch yourself, you want to be different. And even if you don't have the experience required, for example, as a podcast producer, when you go and apply for that, obviously I never edited a podcast, but I worked on dialogue projects before. I worked on similar projects. It wasn't directly direct experience, but I could apply what I learned in those things into that. And literally, after I saw while working with that, I'm actually quite good at that. I just said, you know, I'm going to niche into this industry because I think this industry has a lot of potential. And that was back in 2018 or something, right before COVID, when podcasting was still good, but it was still very niche. Now it's become mainstream after COVID. So,
Yeah.
and I actually caught that right as well with COVID, when I would be on a beach in Greece and my phone would ring with loads of invitations to jobs. I'm not kidding. I got at some point like 30, 40 invitations per day. Oh,
That's fantastic. You're at right place, right time, man. You were all set
yeah.
up. That
Yeah.
is, I love that story. That's beautiful. And all of this, I mean, all of that hard work and putting everything into Upwork and everything else, all that stuff that you did, all those chances you took, led to something pretty cool with you,
Hmm.
coming up with all the ideas and learning the know-how to put together Saspod.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Saspod thing was, I always love the idea of, so I love computers. I love anything that deals with technology, and I like challenges. And for me, SaaSpod was something that I wanted to build from the start. When I started producing, like when I started creating So and Sign as a platform, I did that on WordPress, right? So I took WordPress Builder and I did it myself. I DIY'd it. I learn how to CSS code, to do a bit of HTML and do all that stuff using themes. And I'm good with computers. Like, if you give me anything, any software to learn, I'll have it, mastered in a week, let's say, or depending of the software. And I built all that on WordPress, but as you may know, WordPress has limitations. Even though it's a great open source platform, it still has limitations to it. And I wanted to do something more than that. And I wanted to create an entire platform where customers can have a great experience from buying the package you want to sell to them, like for example a podcast package of 4 episodes, uh, to the communication, how does that happen with the client, to revisions, because I started to look and I realized that there are loads of things that you can systemize and make this process really easy for the customer, so he doesn't or she doesn't need to feel like it's a grind working with you. Some people may think like, I'm just gonna put it in this script now and do it myself, then actually providing all the details to the freelancer and having my episode edited in a week instead of having it in 2 days or something. So I created this journey inside Saspod where clients have a very collaborative way of working with my team and myself as well. And I do actually try to provide a personalized experience to the services. So it's not just like you submit
Hmm.
the audio files to us and then we do whatever, or audio or video files, because we do video production as well. And then we do like, whatever you want with it, or like just accept whatever you send to us. No, it's a collaborative approach to it, and we coach our clients, making sure that they understand that they need to record quality audio and video. They need to do all all these preparation things in order to make sure that they have the best podcast. And then obviously from that point, the bar is a lot higher. We can produce something that is really, really good quality. And then obviously that's going to help them with a personal brand, with a business brand, with their marketing, content marketing strategies for their business and all that. So, that's kind of like why I created Saspod, because it allows a lot of customization. It's coded from the ground up, so there's no WordPress anymore. So,
Wow. I remember WordPress. Yeah, I started using that a long time ago. But I mean, it's a good beginner, program to launch. But I mean, yeah, you clearly have a technological learning curve that the rest of us, are a little behind. So, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how to use Zoom, man. So,
yeah, yeah,
so.
yeah.
But I love what you're doing with Saspod then. So if just so that we can bring it home for our listening audience, because we have podcasters who are on here,
Mhm.
and so if I have, do you primarily deal with folks who have a show and are trying to make it a lot easier on themselves, or with folks who don't have a show yet, and
Both.
you're going to help them get the show?
Both. Yeah,
Both.
both. So, for example, let's say, uh, let's take an example as a case. Let's say there is a company that does finance, right? A fintech company, a SaaS, maybe it's a SaaS company, or whatever type of company, and they want to start a podcast. Uh, if they want to start a podcast, or if they have already a podcast, doesn't matter. What we're gonna do every time a customer comes on board, we're gonna treat the customer as either they're going to start a podcast or they're going to relaunch a podcast. Most of the time, people that come to us, they may have a podcast that doesn't work properly, right? And they want somebody or a solution for their podcast in order for the podcast to actually work. We had actually a few clients that mastered podcasting before, and then they just wanted to outsource the podcast production to us. We have a few clients like that, but most of the time it are clients that either don't have a podcast or their podcast doesn't work as they would like it to work. And then we treat each and every client the same. We look into what's working. We do a podcast audit. We see exactly like what makes this podcast good, what makes this podcast bad, what can we do to change certain things in order to get the results we want. And then we measure that as well. Once we start launching the podcast, we measure exactly like how many listeners and even customers. Sometimes we ask our clients like, did the podcast actually bring any customers to you? We would like to know, and all that. So it's a place where customers come, and after they work with us, they know that they have a podcast working, right? So we take this customer, and then we figure out what's their target audience. So we look sometimes, most of the time, especially if you're working with a business, the target audience usually is a zoomed out version of the target customer. Usually that's kind of like the case. However, each show is very different from each other. It depends on the goal. It depends on the goal of the customer. If the customer wants to use podcasting as a sales strategy, or if the client might want to use it as a branding strategy, whatever that is, uh, it needs to be different from client to client. So we have it tailored, and then we figure that out. We also need to figure out the type of guest. If it's a podcast where you have interviews, the type of guest you want to bring on the show as well. So we have something called a guest avatar. So we're looking into what profession they have, what experience they have as a, like if they have speaking experience as well. We want to get people that have a really, really good vibe to them, because at the end of the day, what we're doing, it's entertainment in a way, even though it's educational or things like that. But we want people that are able to talk properly in the front of a camera. They have a good personal branding themselves. They have a little bit of following on their social media. So is this kind of people we're looking for. And then obviously the guest avatar sometimes may also have partnership experience, like partnership opportunities for the client. So for example, let's
Mm.
say the client himself is in finance, and let's say we interview people that are also into finance, right? Sometimes partnerships can develop there, or even a guest could become a client of some sort, things like that. So we want to maximize the opportunities from a podcast from both sides, one from the audience, but also from the guests we bring on board, because podcasting is a great networking tool as well. So we try to tick all these boxes. And then we also look into how can we use podcasting as a brand amplification tool. As you may know, an audio podcast, for example, will get on all these different platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Um, what else is there? Used
Once
to
you
be
pass
Google
those two,
Podcasts,
yeah.
Google Podcasts, now they're Amazon Music, Podchaser, you name
Right.
it. So there's
Yeah.
many, many other there. And obviously they can use our podcast hosting solution for distribution, but if they want to use a third party, that's also fine. And then when you do that, you obviously get all the benefits of multiple listings on the internet. But what else can you do after that? Because most people stop at that stage, or they distribute it via RSS and then put it on YouTube, and that's it. What's after that? What can we do after that to make sure that the podcast is actually listened to properly? So, for example, certain techniques that we employ on our site. One is content repurposing. So we do provide content repurposing services where, for example, we take a podcast and then we turn that into articles. These articles, if tailored properly, if done in a strategic way, you can actually have certain keywords rank on Google, and you have it SEO optimized, and then you obviously drive more traffic to the client's website, right? So more traffic to the client's website, more sales, more listeners on the podcast, and so on. So we embed the audio and the video in the article. So every landing that happens on the article, that's a potential new person that listens to your podcast, because obviously people can type your podcast into Spotify. They can type like podcast marketing podcast, or I don't know, let's say the finance person, finance podcast. I don't know. They can find your podcast in there, but that search, first thing first, we don't know exactly how Spotify works in terms of like how people search podcasts. You need to have feedback, reviews, and obviously you need to have a bit of an audience for the algorithm to start showing you up. As same for Apple, but on search, on Google search, uh, it's pretty much out in the open. You just need to learn how to do SEO properly. And then if you make the right article, you've got the opportunity of having multiple people coming to your website and also listening to your episodes as well. So that's one thing that we do. Obviously, social media, the reels. You can create multiple reels from a podcast and then send send these reels to all your different platforms. And it's not about necessarily the amount of numbers you get per reel, like in terms of like how many likes and how many comments and engagement. That's all extra, in my opinion. That's great to have that. However, you make your channels look busy. They are very busy all the time with content. You might get followers from time to time in there. But the main purpose of this is when people actually go and Google your podcast, let's say the pod files, right? What do they see right in there? Do they see zero results or maybe just a Spotify link? Or do they see reels from social media popping up on Google? Because there's like something called shorts on Google, and they show the short videos even from Facebook and even from TikTok into the search results. There are things like your article, right? Shows up in there every time you make an article with your podcast episode. There's more results in there. So obviously, you teach Google about your podcast, and then Google will start taking these into what I call a Google graph. So when you have a unique idea, let's say the pod files, the pod files doesn't exist. It didn't exist before I created it. Google doesn't know what the pod files is. It may actually mistake these for the X Files, which is the movie series, right?
Right.
And what you want to do is make sure that Google starts to understand who you are, what the podcast is. And we employ this on the podcast, but we also employ that on the person leading the podcast, let's say the host. So, for example, on my show, the Pod Files, I'm hosting my show. I'm always mentioning my own name into the post everywhere. Bogdan Bratis, Bogdan Bratis, Bogdan Bratis, everywhere, everywhere. And when people start searching for your name, let's say somebody that wants to interview you on their own podcast, what will they see? Right?
Hmm.
Adding your podcast on IMDb, for example, that's an interesting strategy. But for that to happen, you need to have a good quality podcast. Get it there on IMDb. You get more discoverability this way. Not because people are looking for your podcast on IMDb or anything like that, but because IMDb is a very reputable website for video content, and they start accepting podcasts in there. You can add it there, and when people search for your podcast on Google, more stuff shows up, and obviously you get the backlinks from IMDb as well. And yeah, there's loads of things that we employ to kind of like create that brand amplification thing.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Wow. Interesting. I mean, I appreciate you sharing some, specific strategies. I know you don't want to give away the entire secret sauce of what you do,
Well,
but
it's hard to do anyway. So even if I say so, it's not something that people will be able to do immediately.
yeah, gotcha. So they still need you, which is good. So I appreciate you letting that out there. The I love the idea that there are so many different ways to utilize the podcast because so
Hmm.
many people just kind of look at it and go, "All right, I need downloads and I can get advertising," and like that's all they know and that's all they
Hmm.
think. I have people who are starting podcasts who go, "All right, what do I have to do to get ads?" And I'm
Hmm.
like, "Well, publish an episode. That'll help.
Hmm.
Let's try starting there." You're really into then working personally with people in
Hmm.
terms of how are they trying to use the podcast? Is it a top of funnel, lead
Hmm.
magnet, marketing
Yeah,
arm,
that's with the
that type of thing?
business. Yeah, but we also work with influencers that have a podcast, and then they want to use the podcast as a business, right? Because
Okay.
you can have the podcast as a business, that's the business itself, and then you can also have a podcast powering a business.
Okay.
So any type, we're gonna have different approach for this type of client. So one approach for an influencer, another approach for a business, for example. And another thing is with podcasting, we mentioned this brand amplification thing. Uh, you said, what did you say before?
It's okay. No,
Because I lost my train of thoughts a little bit.
it's all right, man. I've been having that kind of day all day, so I
Yeah.
don't blame you. I'm glad it's not just the old guys that are having that problem.
No,
The no, we were talking
more
about how
coffee is needed.
I understand
Hmm.
how the podcasts have different uses, different
Yeah.
functions, for everybody.
Yeah. So, yeah, they basically that's what's happening. You have different functions. So the podcast is going to do all sorts of things. And yeah, you discussed about people using their podcast as a business and having ads on them. that's exactly what I wanted to touch on. Is you if you have a podcast and you want to treat your podcast as a business, you must treat it as a business. So, what's the actual investment into that, right? Because some people they start their podcast as a DIY project, which I totally applaud, and that's exactly how I got into my business, right?
Hmm.
DIY, it's all the way, which is good. But at some point, you need to start investing into your podcast. So obviously, we start with the obvious things like buying the right equipment to make sure that you increase the quality of your podcast in terms of the look and the sound. Then, obviously, if you have the money, hire a podcast production company like ours, where we can help you with post production, for example, and making sure that it looks even better and all that. And obviously, it allows you to work on different strategies, different things that maybe you're you shouldn't like worry about podcast production per se, podcast post production per se, because that's somebody else's job. So now you're not gonna try and do things with Audacity or Descript and like take your hair out because you don't know how certain settings work and stuff like that, and Reddit everything. So yeah, and then obviously you set the ads for other podcasts to for businesses to start placing ads on your podcast. If you don't have the right numbers, they're not going to do that, right? It's just a waste of time, and you cannot pitch yourself to advertisement companies, and you cannot pitch yourself to businesses to sponsor your podcast and all sorts, because that's another thing. Some businesses may, instead of starting a podcast themselves, they will just place an ad on a podcast. It's a lot easier for them to do that, and maybe they don't want the extra other things that podcasting provides other than exposure of their business through an ad, for example. They don't care about personal branding. They don't care about, which is very important in my opinion, no matter what business you have. But you don't have the numbers. What can you do to make these numbers, work for you? And obviously, if you have a marketing budget for your own podcast, you can start using that to place your podcast on Spotify ads, for example, or YouTube ads, or use certain platforms that work for your niche.
And it looks like we froze up there for just a second. I lost Bogdan for just a minute. And we'll see if we can't get him back. This happens once in a while in podcasting, folks, especially when you're going across the ocean. So we will see if we can get it in our makeup.
Right.
So,
Good.
all
So
right,
that
there
one
we go.
is saving on your computer now, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, we're in good
Awesome.
shape.
Good, 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 good. Awesome. So I was saying that other businesses want to place ads on your podcast, and in order for that to happen, you need to have an audience. You need to have something to bargain with, right? So you need to treat your podcast as a business, and take some of your marketing budget, if you have one, or if you don't, you might want to invest in your podcast as a start, and start advertising your podcast. Start putting your podcast on Spotify ads, for example, or YouTube ads, or Facebook ads, whatever that works for your niche. You need to try out a few different techniques because each podcast is different. The audiences are in different places. So, for example, for my podcast, the audience may be on YouTube. For other podcasts, the audience may be on LinkedIn, because for whatever reason, the audience targeted for that is more business oriented, let's say. And you might want to employ some of these strategies, paid strategies, and together with the organic strategies, some of them I just shared a few minutes ago. And once you do that, what happens? And I have here an analogy. Uh, I'm not sure if you have. Do you have snow there?
Oh, not right now, no.
Not right now, but usually throughout the year there's snow there, right?
We have a lot of snow in Indiana, that's for sure.
Good, awesome. So basically, what happens is you have a snowflake, and the snowflake, if you have one snowflake in your hand, it will start melt away really quickly because of the heat from your palms. That's kind of like your podcast. That's your audience, right? So there's nothing there. It will just there's nothing to attract more audience to your podcast. So when you try to do some of your organic efforts together with your paid efforts of marketing your podcast, what will happen is multiple snowflakes will start to come together, and it will create a snowball, and that will create a snowball effect to your podcast. If you don't do that, it will be really, really, really hard to break through. Uh, but for this to happen, you really need a good podcast. If your podcast is bad and you try to market that, you're just going to waste a bunch of money and nothing is going to happen. So you need to create a good concept. And that's why a podcast strategy is important, like a marketing plan for your podcast. And the entire concept needs to be sound. Once that's there, then if you put money into it, almost like a business plan, right? If you put money into it, it will give you a return on investment. If that doesn't happen, probably you did something wrong. Maybe the business idea, the podcast idea is not good enough. So that's kind of like how you should treat a podcast, especially if you're an influencer, for example.
Right. So when you mentioned earlier that you do a podcast audit with someone who
Mm-hmm.
comes to you, that's one of the things you're doing, right? Is basically saying, hey,
Yep,
first of all, is the idea sound? I mean, do you go all the way
exactly.
back that far?
Yeah. So there's multiple services we offer, but one of the things that we do is the podcast audit, for example, and we can look into what they do wrong or right on their podcast. We have like a checklist we go through.
Okay.
And yeah, one of the things is we look into the podcast idea. Is that idea good enough? If what can we do to shape this a little bit better? Maybe to package it a little bit better, uh, make it more engaging for the user. Because, for example, there's podcasts on things that I mentioned finance. Finance is not an exciting topic for a lot of people, right? But what if we package it in a right way? So, for example, Randy, what's his name? What's his name? The guy, it's on the top of my head, but is there's a guy. I think I'm just gonna look for it, and you're gonna edit this out.
No, you're in
I'll
good shape,
I'll
brother. I
let you
don't
know. I'll
edit
let you
because
know
these are the
exactly.
parts that are funny. So we're all
Yeah,
good to
no,
go.
no. I need to see. Yeah, Dave Ramsey. There you go.
Dave Ramsey. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Dave
I know
Ramsey. So
Dave.
Dave Ramsey, well, not a lot of people will be like super exciting listening to finance stories, right? Or finance in general. Like they may not understand it well, or personal finance advising and all that maybe is not an exciting topic for everybody. But he packages it in a very nice way. You hear stories from other people, and you hear horror stories. You hear funny stories. You hear all sorts of different stories. People call in the studio, and to me, that as an individual, that's exciting. I want to listen to that. It's a show. It's not
Right.
just a normal podcast. So that's kind of like the approach I would go for. Like, let's say a podcast that doesn't have an exciting topic, but what can we do to make that exciting? How can we structure the episodes? And we create a structure of the episode. Let's say it starts this way, it has these questions, these type of questions. What if we have a Q&A in here? Or if we have like the audience actually joining in somehow, maybe virtual call, or maybe could be voicemail sent to us via LinkedIn or Instagram or email, whatever. And then we take these bits and pieces and we make it a cool show. So yeah, that's kind of like one of the things we're doing in the podcast audit.
Nice. Nice. I mean, it sounds like very, very full service for anybody who wants to come check this
Mm-hmm.
out. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Now, you've also got your own podcast that you're doing. So I
Mm-hmm.
assume that you're leading by example with how you run the pod files. And
Exactly.
then the podcast itself, tell everybody what they can expect to hear content wise on your Pod Files podcast when they tune into it.
Mm-hmm. So the idea of the podcast came like I always wanted to start my own podcast. However, I was super busy getting other podcasts done. But at some point, I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. So back in at the end of 2024, so in the winter, I started like developing the concept and everything, and I started booking people on the show. And I try to interview people that are here locally in Glasgow. However, that proves to be a little bit of a challenge because Glasgow is a big place, but it's not as big as I would love it to be. Like it's not London, for example, right? Um, and
Okay.
I also want to hear from people across the world as well. So we interview people remotely as well, and we use Riverside for recording, for example. My focus in the beginning was to have the podcast look really, really good and sound really good. And then obviously, I would use the podcast then to kind of like show the episodes to other different guests, like high profile guests. Look, this is the type of show we are running. This is how it looks like. Would you want to be a guest on the show? And most of the time, because the podcast looks great, they will say yes, even though maybe the authority of the podcast is not that high because it's a new podcast. I'm actually episode 7 now. Today I actually just dropped an episode with one of my friends, Randy Rody. You should listen to that.
All right.
And basically, uh, because of that quality, people started queuing up actually to be guests on the podcast, especially locally. And I joined a few networking events to kind of like spread the word around the podcast and all that. And I've got quite a few high profile guests. So my first guest was Craig Campbell, who is a podcast, who is an SEO expert here in Glasgow. Is one of the best SEO experts in the world. And I got him on the podcast, and he took a leap of faith to actually come in my studio to record a podcast because he didn't know much about me. And what I sent him was just a previous recording that I recorded with another person. It wasn't the actual podcast per se, but it was just I told him, look, this is how it's gonna look. This is the type of like um, the quality that I'm aiming for. Would you agree to come on the show? And he came on the show, and actually I pitched the show to him on a live stream. So he was on a live stream on Facebook talking about something, and then me and my marketing manager, we were thinking like, how can we pitch this guy? And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna ask him to email me that I have a podcast. I don't live far away from him. Just email me after the stream. And then he emailed me after that. So he took a leap of faith, came in my studio and recorded a podcast. And then from Craig, I had a chance to meet other people in the industry and interview them as well. And yeah, it's good when you do something correctly and you do it properly from the beginning. You've got the chance to work with some great people. So yeah, and the show, it's all about marketing, podcast marketing, content marketing, how to turn anything that you create in terms of content into something that really works. Um, so we interviewed, like I said, SEO experts, public speaking coaches, um, press release experts. Who else we interviewed? We interviewed somebody on law. So they describe like what we need to take care of, like when it comes to trademarking, to contracts and everything you do in the media industry. That's really important, especially the bigger you get, the more important that is. So
Wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, I imagine it's probably a good idea for for you to have a podcast since you're teaching people how to podcast. I mean, you need to have your finger on the pulse and be involved. So that's good. That's a good
exactly.
thing. That's a good thing. I am curious if you don't mind me asking another question about Saspod. When people come to you, are they? Uh, can you say there's a majority of things, or are they looking more for monetization help? Are they looking for content creation help? Is there something that they come to you like more than other
Specifically.
causes? Yeah, specifically.
Yeah. So I find at the moment, at this stage of my business, I find that loads of people are coming to us to outsource the podcast post production process. So the editing of the content, making sure that it looks good and it's presented well, and the repurposing of this content as well. So creating reels and the articles and all that. So I
Mm.
find that is kind of like my best seller in terms of services. But yeah, we do get business on the podcast hosting as well. And then now we're launching the podcast marketing service as well, which is going to come up sometime this summer.
Beautiful. All right, good deal. Yeah, well, this is going to come out at a good time then for you
Yeah,
to be talking to other podcasters going, hey, if you're tired of doing all this marketing stuff, every day, doing it over and over,
yeah,
farm it out. Let us take care of it for
yeah.
you. So
We'll
I
make
think
sure
that's
that we
great.
expose the podcast. We'll amplify it as much as possible. So
I absolutely love it. And one of the things I really love about you and your story, I got to be honest, is that it seems like every couple of minutes when you're telling a story, it starts with, so I just did it.
oh yeah,
There's this guy and I wanted to reach him, so I just sent him an email. Like, why not?
that's something I live by. I, for example, I always so I used to be a reserved person. What I mean by that is like my father, for example, would be a very skeptical person. He would not do certain things that would be a little bit off, if that makes sense. And I said, you know what? I'm not gonna be like that, even though it's in my blood. And I do feel sometimes the urge of saying no or like don't do it or whatever. I'm just gonna say, you know what, let's do it, see what happens, right? And when you do stuff like this, things click,
Right.
things happen. And for example, when I built my studio, I had to buy two cameras for my studio, and there were options for me to buy something cheap uh, or something more expensive. And the expensive one was kind of like on the edge of my budget. And I said, you know what? I'll do it. I'll just buy it. I don't even look at it. It's important for me. I'll do it. And I did it. And now the equipment that I got and the entire studio and everything really is like a nice environment. I love to work in this environment. It makes me do more business. But at the time, that thing wasn't really apparent in my brain. It was just about the price. Like, should I pay more or less? But now, once I got all my equipment and my studio and everything, even though it's a bit of an overkill, because I do have a lot of stuff, uh, it feels great and it feels a nice place to work in, and I can do more stuff, right? So even coming here to the UK, right, from Romania, when I decided to come here, it was also like a click moment as well. When I said, I actually I was playing in a band, quite a successful band in Bucharest, as a lead singer. No, I was playing as a keyboard player in that band, and I was playing weddings and all sorts of things. And then at some point, I said, you know what? I would love to move in the UK to see what it's like to live in another country. And I applied to university, and I applied to four universities. All four universities accepted me. But that thing was really like, okay, I'll just do it. I called a company that deals with placing students in foreign countries in the UK. They sorted everything for me in terms of like what I need to do, and then I did it, and in just a matter of months, bang, I was there. So it's kind of like that.
I love it. That's what I mean. I mean, you can basically sort of trace your success to the fact that you're
Mm-hmm.
willing to go for it. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
don't take these chances, then you're not sitting here.
Well, X Factor was a funny one as well. I was 17 when I applied to go to X Factor Romania. And I remember I went to my mom and we were in the kitchen and we said, you know what, let's just apply. And it was literally just a form, a little form that I filled in. And I applied. And then 2 months later, I was on live TV, right? Watched
Why
by
not?
millions of people, right? Why not? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that with everything. Even starting this business, it was the same. So if you do things and if you don't stay still, if you start doing stuff, things will happen. And I do believe in the law of attraction. If you know
Mhm.
how that works,
Absolutely.
you think about stuff that you want in your life, but that doesn't work if you don't do anything about it.
Right. You can't just think about it. You actually have
It's
to act on
exactly
it.
like when the phone calls, like you've got the phone ringing. If you don't pick up the phone, nothing will happen. So it's exactly the same.
Exactly. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Now you did also you do is it one-on-one coaching that you're offering a discount on to listeners, or is that the Saspod? What's the 20% that you're
So
talking about?
I think the 20% for that is for the post-production services, I
Awesome.
guess. But the 20% can be applied to any service. It doesn't matter.
Beautiful. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
folks, hey, Bogdan's offering a 20% off service to any of his services. That's going to be in the show notes with the proper
Mhm.
links and everything else. So thank you very much for offering that to our listeners. I appreciate
Not
it.
a problem.
Uh,
Anytime.
yeah, but I think that's awesome too. All right. So I do have this kind of goofy question that I like to ask. And, you can apply it to your podcast that you've been doing, but
Hmm.
you can also apply it to your business. Okay. Saspod
Okay.
and so on. In terms of what you do, what is it about what you do that you absolutely love the most?
Hmm.
And what is it about what you do that you just can't stand, would love to throw it out the window and never see it again, dislike the most?
Right. Funny. I On the second one, I still need to think about it, but the first one I already know. So what I love the most is seeing stuff grow. That's the thrill. That thrill, I love that. When I see stuff going up in terms of anything, could be SEO numbers, could be views on a YouTube channel, could be anything. So I love seeing stuff grow. So that's something that I really enjoy about my job, and also seeing a client that understands all the teachings that I provided, and then applying them, and then seeing the result of that. I love seeing that. So that's something I love. What I don't like, um, I would say I don't like to sit in the front of the computer all day long. However, I'm still doing it. I hate staring in the screen. I've been doing this for years, and I would love to get out more in the nature and enjoy more time with my family and try to do more things in the real world. Even though I live in this digital environment, and we all live in this, right?
Right.
Uh, I don't like sitting with my eyes in the screen all the time, but sometimes I need to do it. So, for example, last night I stayed awake until 1 a.m. in the morning. So I had to do it. So, but I don't like when that happens. When my stamina is down and I still need to go the extra mile, I would prefer being in bed or like do something else. But if I need to do it, that's it. I'll do it.
I love it. You'd rather be on a beach in Greece, right?
Oh yes, anytime.
That sounds amazing. So yeah, I love that. Great answers. Great answers. I haven't
Mhm.
heard the second one from anybody before.
Yeah,
Usually it's
I was just
editing or
thinking
something.
something that I don't like. I was actually thinking about that yesterday. I was staring in the computer and my eyes were hurting from so much. And it's probably is the physical side of it. It's not necessarily the. I love doing stuff on computer, and I've lived with computers in front of me all my life because I was born in '96. But it's something that I probably, if I could put a stop to it for a week or 2 weeks to get a vacation or something like that, I'll do it. So maybe this year I'm gonna go in Greece for a little bit of a swim.
I can't believe you just said you were born in '96. That just doesn't even like click in my brain, brother.
96, yeah,
Oh my
96.
God.
Well, I'm considered to be a millennial, right? So I'm 20. I'm 28th.
Nice.
I'm 28th.
Nice.
Yeah,
You looked young. I was like, all right, he's probably in his 20s. I got you.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I was married in back in '93 or '98 rather. So it's
There you
like,
go. But
you
you still keep going. You're still
right.
doing the stuff. So that's what I want. I want to be you in the future. I want
Oh,
to be like, look, I want to not stop doing my craft, and uh, basically always like evolving and trying to improve myself on anything and go with the flow. So that's what I would like to do.
I love it. I love what you're doing. I love that you started where you did. I love your story. You have a ton of knowledge, which you're offering out. That's fantastic. I know everybody who's listening has heard something they can use today, which is also
Hopefully,
really
yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, as we kind of bring this together, you've been very generous with your time, brother, and I really appreciate it, especially since you worked until 1 in the morning, your time,
Mhm.
which is across the pond, so to speak. So I really appreciate that. Let's, as we kind of wrap up, what is your best piece of advice to podcasters that are out there that are just simply not quite where you are, with your knowledge and your
Hmm.
game?
So I would say the best piece of advice is to create a quality podcast that you're proud of. Don't try to shortcut it. Try to make it as good as possible. Think of it like almost like a production TV show. Even though you may not have the resources to do it, just try to think like, what can I do to make it as good as possible? What resources can I borrow a camera? Can I borrow a microphone? Can I maybe use some of my connections to get into a studio or anything like that? Uh, and try to do that, because once you do that, that's going to help out everything else you're gonna do after that. So it's gonna you're gonna be able to do everything I said. If if you don't do that, that's quite hard to achieve after that. You may I've I've seen people rebranding shows a lot. And I always say, if you rebrand the show mid-season or anything like that, you probably haven't done the groundwork in the beginning, right? When Let's look at any TV program out there. I don't know. We just talked about X Factor, right?
Right.
X Factor looks the same as he used to look 20 years ago. It's almost the same. Maybe certain things, little things change, but the name of the show didn't change. X Factor is the same color scheme, same production value, same format is the same. The reason, because it works and they created something that works. So the same with podcasting. I would say try to put as much thought into what you're going to create, because if you do that, then everything else after that will become easier. So that's
Nice.
what I would say.
That's beautiful advice. I love that advice.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that and everything else that you have today, man. Best way for people to reach you.
So you find me everywhere. So Google my name, Bogdan Bratis. You'll find everything there. In terms of my LinkedIn is there as well. My email is exposed everywhere on on the internet. So that's contact@saspod.com. If you want to reach me, please do. And then obviously there's gonna be a few links in the show notes. You're gonna be able to get there as well. So there's always some sort of place for you to reach me. Just Google me and you'll find me.
I love that. Another great answer because you practice what you preach. That's what you want everybody to do is be
Yep,
out there like that. That's
exactly.
fantastic,
That's
man.
what they need to do. Yeah.
That's beautiful. All right. So, founder of Saspod, host of the Pod Files, Bogdan Bratis. Bogdan, thank you so much, brother, for coming on this morning, for sharing what you did. I absolutely enjoyed every minute of it and loved having you here, man.
Thank you, Rory. And it was a pleasure to be part of the show. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Folks, this has been another awesome episode of The Podcaster Nation. If you didn't learn anything today, you need to go back and re-listen because you missed a lot. All right. So go back, check something out, get a pad, get a pen, write something down because this is the podcast. It's about podcasters. It's for podcasters and it's done by podcasters. And folks, as we proved yet again today, this really is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So keep sailing.